Blake, what do you know about St. Louis?
I've been once, and I was told they have incredible ice cream and a sneakily large mob presence.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a guy who might come in second place in an ice cream eating competition in his elementary school years, and I'm here with my boss, a man who definitely would have taken first in that ice cream eating competition, Toby Walters.
I'm trying to think if I ever won a competition in elementary school.
I mean, most good looking wasn't happening in elementary school.
Well, that wasn't till middle school and high school. Like, nobody cares in elementary school.
True.
But I did just remember I came in second place in the spelling bee.
Oh, nice. We can take second place, buddies.
And I remember the word that I misspelled was ledge. It's that DG.
Did that just make you feel like jumping off a ledge? Were you really down?
I mean, the stage was like 4 feet high, so I could have.
That's quite the ledge. Well, you didn't fall off any ledges in St. Louis, did you?
And not that I remember. So I got to visit for the first time a couple months ago. I had never been before. And I've heard about some things about St. Louis. We have several friends that have moved to the Nashville area from St. Louis. And the number one thing they say is that it's a wonderful place for families because there are so many free things the city provides for kids.
Oh, nice.
Like the zoo is free.
Wait, what? Does
Yeah.
capitalism not exist in St. Louis?
That's what I was thinking. Maybe the taxes are super high.
Interesting.
So another thing I found very curious is as I was leaving St. Louis and headed north into Illinois, I essentially went over the river, and it's like you're in like city, urban area in St. Louis, and there's all this stuff, and then you cross over the river, and I'm like, am I in like a post-apocalyptic movie with like just vast wasteland?
Oh my
It's
gosh,
like
what
you
happened?
cross the river and there's nothing.
Oh, well, I got a story in there. Remember that time I said that how much per diem do we get to spend on gear trips per hotel? And you were like, I was like, I'm looking them up on my phone. And you're like, doofus, just go to, what's that, Hotwire or something?
Sure.
That was where I was at. It was St. Louis trying to figure out where to stay. And I was in the wasteland area.
What is that wasteland? It's like you go from city to nothing, just immediately. And I'm like, how does this happen?
I think that's the modern America infrastructure. It's literally like cities and then nothing in between. And I always wonder when you see those gas stations, what do the people in those little areas do? What's their life like? They live in the middle of nowhere.
I don't know. So the reason I went to St. Louis was a church reached out, and guess what they said?
We have gear to sell.
We have gear. Please help.
It's almost like everyone has gear.
So this was one of those fun situations where it's a larger church, and the guy reached out and said, look, we have so much gear, I don't even know where to begin. He's like, please help. So I said, hey, help is on the way. And it was, the timing was perfect because we had a trip going through Missouri, and I looked at the route and I was like, dude, I'm going to be like 45 minutes from there. So I would love to stop by and take a look at your gear. And so the only thing I knew of this church was that our buddy, Nathan Alves, had done the lighting install.
Oh, yeah, that's our good buddy. First guy ever on the podcast.
Number one guest. So I arrive and they open up the bay door to the loading dock, and there's just gear everywhere.
Oh, it's a gear heaven.
And first thing is like Lecos, just everywhere. And all sorts of stuff like, you look at just the history of gear. So it's like we would, it's 2022 and I'd be like, yes. And then I get back to like 1987 and I have to start saying like, no, like, that VCR, that DVD player. Yeah, let's go ahead and just recycle that at this point.
What's a DVD or a VCR, Toby?
It's the thing that TiVo wishes it was beforehand.
There we
and
go.
you're like, what's TiVo?
But we said yes to those Lecos. We love some Lecos.
And so halfway through, I'm working with one of their tech directors there. And then halfway through, a gentleman walks in and I'm like, it's like celebrity sighting.
It's not a scoundrel. It's a gentleman.
It's one of those moments where it's like the angels and the sun comes out and it's like, oh, and this guy is like a true legend. And I'm sure that he will pretend to be humble on this podcast, but some of his accolades are just crazy. So it was really fun to partner with this church, be buying all this gear, and then all of a sudden this just like historical godfather of mixing walks in and just acts like it's no big deal.
Well, that's what a real legend does, you know? They never act like one. That's why they're just such a legend.
100%. Maybe we should find out who this legend is.
So introducing the former front of house live audio engineer for Joe Banamassa and audio tech arts leader at the Crossings Church, Scott Ragsdale. I pronounced that wrong, didn't I?
You said John Banamassa. That's not a person.
What is it? Is it Bossama?
Joe.
Wait a minute. So I got the first name right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I was so nervous about that second name that I did. Okay.
Can you say it for him, Scott?
Yes, it's Joe Banamassa.
Man, I'm not gonna live that one down for a while because I got the last one right though. Right?
You got the last name right. You said it right.
I just messed up the Joe. So
I know. You were thinking John Mayer for a second.
Oh goodness. Well, yeah, you inceptioned me with Nathan. Man, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here.
So Scott,
it was good meeting Toby on the back dock.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult was it, you know, as Toby was fangirling over you to just to say I'm just a guy?
I almost got the VCR in the truck.
Almost. He kept trying to sneak it in there. I'm like, Scott, stop it.
You had to say no to your hero, Toby.
I know. I had him autograph every single one of my fingers because those are the fader fingers. I figure it would give me magic when I mix, but
the fader fingers.
It didn't translate.
Okay, when we show up to one of the MXU live events, I'm going to write Scott's name on all of your fingers so that people will think that this is real.
But please pronounce his name correctly.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I should have had that edited out. All right. We're going to do the 5 truths and a lie. Scott, do you think you're going to fool us? How confident are you on your lie?
I'm pretty confident that I'm going to fool you.
Okay. Well, we haven't been, doing well recently on these.
No. Total failures.
Here we go. Number 1, he was the head coach for Scott's Gymnastics.
Is this just, did he start a gymnastics school and just name it after himself?
Okay, so I have found very competent people to be highly competent at other random things. It doesn't make any sense. They do other things too, and then you never even know about it.
Okay.
So that one might work. He mixed for Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
I hope that's true.
Well, I know he did live in Chicago for a long time, so Oprah was filmed in Chicago.
Okay, perfect.
So it tracks.
Secondly, speaking of a track, he ran a full marathon twice. Now, Scott, we need clarification on this. Does this mean you ran the full marathon 2 separate times, or you literally ran a full marathon and then ran it again, in the same day?
If I told you, I'd be giving away the truth, right?
That's a good point.
Okay,
I'm going to assume it just means 2 separate times.
Okay. Number 4. Was a keyboardist in an 80s cover band. That one has to be true. Number 5, drank Barry Manilow's wine. Okay.
I want to find out about that because our buddy Nathan Alves does lighting for Barry Manilow. So we'll see if these 2 people.
What if Scott and Nathan are actually buddies and we don't even know it?
Well, I think they know each other pretty well.
Oh, wait, do they?
We'll find out.
Okay.
Knowing Nathan is true.
Number 6, help design a Waves plugin. That's something a legend would do.
Blake, what's a Waves plugin?
Whenever you're in the lazy river and it's just like waves. No, this is actually it's like a pre-recorded set mix, right? Ish? No?
No.
Scott, what's a Waves
kind of
plugin?
like that VHS player. It's very similar.
Oh my gosh. All right, so Toby, what are we going to go with for a lie on this?
Man. He got sneaky with this list. Nothing's jumping out to me.
This is very good. I see why he was so confident. I'm going to go for the obvious one. I'm going to go for the ran a full marathon twice.
See, I was thinking the obvious one was that he mixed for Oprah Winfrey because that just seems like a huge...
See, that's so cool, though. I think that one's real. If I wasn't going to go with the marathon, I think maybe the gymnastics.
All right. Well, I'm locking it in with Oprah.
Okay, so you got Oprah, and I've got the full marathon. Scott, are either of us right on the lie?
You're both wrong.
Dang it.
Which is something we hear from our coworkers often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the lie is I've never helped design a Waves plugin.
What? See, that's sneaky right there.
Everything else is true. I had my own gymnastics club in my teens and 20s. I was actually a very good gymnast. And in my small town, I grew up in a small farming community of 1,500 people. And so we, just did what we wanted there. It was great. And that's one thing I did. And I had 100 students. It was pretty amazing.
100 students in a small town. That's really awesome.
Yeah. It was great. And yeah, I ran 2 marathons, 26.2 miles, another challenge. And that's when I was in my 40s. Yeah,
The two 26-mile marathons were like back to back?
No, they were a year apart.
Okay. That's what I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, I did a second one because I needed to like prove to myself that I actually did the first one. The last 6 miles on each of those marathons was like an out-of-body experience. I mean, I have found out that when the body's saying I can't do anymore and the mind's saying the same thing, you can still go farther. It's really good for getting through stressful situations, let me tell you.
That's what Toby tells me whenever I'm saying I'm done for work for the day. And he's like, you can go farther.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pay you anymore to do it, but you can do it.
Yeah, it'll be an out-of-body experience. Won't even remember it.
Yeah, but in the 80s, the keyboard player in the 80s band, that's what started all this. I was very happy playing in a cover band for about 8 years, putting myself through college. And that's where I really learned a lot about this business and how to do what I do today. So,
wait, you were using the 80s cover band to help pay for college?
I was.
That's impressive.
Did you finish
college?
It
wasn't paying for much, let me tell you. But yes, it was a paying gig. It's when there was clubs. Do you guys remember clubs? Like
I do. What's a club
events?
like?
Oh, I'm up in the club every Friday. Oons.
Now, a little bit different than that, but yes.
And
DJs were not a thing yet. The bands were actually real. Anyway,
tell us about mixing for Oprah.
Mixing for Oprah, yeah, that was a game changer. A very good friend of mine, Brad Galvin, who's currently out with the Ringo Starr's All-Star Band doing monitors, was working for Harpo, and he would come to Willow Creek when I was mixing, usually like a Christmas or Easter service, and he'd always come by the console and give me a very nice compliment on the mix, and we became really good friends. And when Oprah was going to do I shouldn't say Oprah, it was her team, was going to do the final show for Oprah at the United Center called The Spectacular, which you can still find on YouTube. He asked if I would do the music mix for that. And I was thinking that, I'm going to be like an A2. I'm going to be probably just, watching the console and whatnot. And we ended up at one of the meetings getting in a room, and we were all handed an envelope. We were specifically told that the information in this envelope would not be spoken about to anyone else, almost like an NDA. And when I opened it up, I was seeing all these names like Josh Groban, Alicia Keys, and
John Banamassa.
No.
It's Joe, Toby.
No, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder. I mean, we're talking about some heavyweights. Well, I look at my buddy and I said, so am I going to be basically A2ing for their mixers? And he's like, no, man, you're mixing them. And I'm like, wow.
Dang.
Okay.
And this was her final show?
It was her final show. Yeah, it was her final show. And it was a trip. I mean, I was in the United Center. We were doing rehearsals for a week, and it was a push in every way, shape, or form because the Bulls kept winning basketball games. So we couldn't get into the United Center to start the full rehearsals. And that's a whole nother story. But I was so proficient on the PM1D because I'd been mixing on it for 12 years at Willow Creek that I was up and going pretty quickly and navigating the whole event because of that time spent. And it was a spectacular event, let me tell you.
The PM1D is essentially the console of this podcast because it ends up being the hero in so many stories.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, absolutely. I mean, I think most guys that grew up mixing on it wished we could have taken the surface and just changed the guts. We were so fast on it. It showed every fader. It was like a good friend, and it turned on every day for the entire time I mixed at Willow.
And it seems like Willow Creek is kind of this like factory for opportunity. When we were there for Philo in May, I met one of the worship guys, the bass player, and he said he had been there, I think almost 12 years now. And he said early on, he got approached by somebody. It sounds similar to, your story of the guy stopping by the board at Willow Creek. And this guy approached him and said, hey, I've got, this gig that I can't do, but maybe you can fill in for. And he said that sure. Like, what's the opportunity? And he said, you'd be a bass player on the Fox show Empire. And so he said, well, that sounds cool. And he said the first week he shows up to the show and they're like, yes, you're going to be playing with Alicia Keys. And he's thinking, what now?
Chicago, being the city it is, you're going to have celebrities. You're going to have people of importance there in the business. And Willow absolutely was kind of a destination place for many reasons. And also being an awesome church when I was there. And the technology and the focus on detail and excellence was, paramount. So we saw many people come in the room, and it was definitely a place as a musician or as a technical person to get noticed and get asked to do other things.
So let me go right back to the Oprah Winfrey thing, because that's pretty legendary that you mixed for her last show. Is there any stories from that, or did it just go off so swimmingly because, Scott Ragsdale plus PMD equals success?
Man, I think it really emphasized making sure that you're prepared, because we were offsite for a week at OSA, and that's where the crew was put together. And the guy on the other end of the snake for me was Ian Kuhn, and Ian mixes monitors for the Dave Matthews Band, and Brad was doing another mix. Like, we had 4 PM1Ds. I was on the music console. Jimmy, Oprah's guy, was on the talking heads and video playback and various forms of that nature. And then Ian was doing all the band mixes. Brad was doing the orchestra mix. So there was this cool team that got together, and we sat there and just programmed our desks and really kind of gelled and talked about the event and the vastness of it. And it was just a great time. I mean, and it was just crazy to me that this church boy that, I'm mixing in church is about to step up and mix at the adult level of, there's Tom Cruise, there's Halle Berry, there's Madonna. I mean, just walking around the arena during rehearsal with these huge, monumental actors and musicians, and we're facilitating their art. And
how old were you at that point?
I was, 2011.
Like, are you north of 30 at least?
Yeah.
South of 40.
I'm terrible with math. I want to say I was probably 42.
Okay. Well, there you go. By 42, you got some steel.
Dang it, I'm 42. Now I feel like you feel on every episode when you are compared to somebody who's younger than you or the same age and they've accomplished way more.
Well, and I'm in a tough sphere to be in for that, because we got tech directors who are 24 running everything for a mega church already, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. That's awesome. You got to give us the details on drinking Barry Manilow's wine, though, and if that was able to top.
Well, you came.
That was a funny one. I want to throw in Seth Jackson's name into this too, because Seth and Nate have that company together. I was actually there. I went to college with Seth Jackson.
Did you drink his wine as well?
And
the dark room creative.
He's got a great Reddit time or two, but I would go to see Barry Manilow when he came through Chicago and be at front house with Seth. And there was just this time I was there with a very good friend of mine, Matt Wilkerson, who was the service caller and all kinds of other things at Willow. We went, and when the show was over, we went down in the dressing room area, and everybody left to go have a meeting with Barry. And we're looking around, and there was this wine, and not really paying attention to what room we walked into. We just started drinking it, and it was Barry Manilow's dressing room.
Okay, though. So it was a wine bottle. It's not like you drank from his cup of wine.
No.
That would be funny.
We were just walking around, and nobody was anywhere. And we just happened to see that there was this, couple bottles of wine opened and ready to be poured into a glass and consumed.
Okay, so I feel like we've just started to scratch the surface with your career, as we've named you the godfather of mixing. And as Blake said, there's a sneakily large mob presence in St. Louis. And so godfather of mixing, mob presence, like it tracks.
Yeah, I see how you're tying those
in. Can you go back to the beginning? What got your start in this, and how did that lead up to Willow Creek?
Yeah, okay. I had my first drum set at age 5. I begged mom and dad for a drum set, and they went to either Sears or J.C. Penney and purchased like this drum set. I think it had the monkeys on it, and it was made of paper. And I beat the crap out of it, and it was awesome. And I ended up playing basically concert snare and other percussive instruments through grade school and high school. And once I got to high school, a very good friend of mine was this amazing piano player. And I was like, wow, you can play an entire song on a piano. And that's when synthesizers were becoming a very big thing. And so ended up taking real piano lessons, your traditional classical type piano lessons, and translated that into buying a DX7 with another good friend of mine who played guitar. And he said, you know, if you want to be in a band, there's no sheet music for this. You're going to have to learn to play by ear. And I was like, well, all right, well, let's do this. So the very first song I learned to play by ear was Abacab by Genesis. And I never looked back. It was kind of like that was what I was going to do. And I also ended up seeing a local cover band when I was a freshman in high school, and standing there and watching all my favorite songs being performed that I was hearing on the radio. Again, this is pre-internet, no MTV. This is like raw and real. And I absolutely knew that is what my life course was going to do and what I was going to be about. And I started as a musician and played a very long time till I graduated from college in 1993. I was playing music the entire time. I basically got the degree from my dad. You know, get a degree. You have to get a degree. All right, I'll get a degree. And I just kept playing music the entire time, and basically translated my playing in a band to working with a local sound company. And then another good friend of mine, Ron Krause, who's works at Grace Church St. Louis, started following him around because he was also mixing my local band and getting more of the idea of what a pro sound company does and all the gear that's involved with that. And we were at a show, as I remember, and something broke, and Ron said, hey, I got to go fix this. Just do the sound check because we got to do the sound check. And I said, all right. So I did the sound check, and he comes back and he goes, well, that sounds pretty good. And I said, well, that's what it should sound like. And like this light bulb went off that I've been deconstructing music in my bedroom with my boombox and my keyboards, basically pulling keyboard parts out of already great mixes. So I was deconstructing and reconstructing. So to do a mix, I knew where everything was supposed to go and what it was supposed to sound like and how it was supposed to fit, breaking music apart to learn to play by ear. And so basically, I never looked back. After I graduated, I ended up getting a job at a youth group in St. Louis and was mixing that band. And the senior pastor kept hearing the mixes and was like, man, the youth group sounds fantastic. I want my band to sound like that. And basically went from youth group to mixing in big church. And that lasted for 7 years. I got tons of stories there. I ended up doing some projects with Integrity, who was recording the worship leader that was there. They hired me for another job. I met this guy named Lincoln Brewster. We hit it off the week that I was there mixing, and he took me on the road with him, like 1990, 1991. And in 2001, I ended up getting asked to come work at Willow Creek, took the job, leaving out tons of information here. Took the job in 2001, and I was at Willow Creek on staff right at the beginning of building the 7,200 seat room, and just got educated to the fullest of that whole process of putting in a PA, lights, video, just everything. There was a production crew of 45 people there when I started, and everybody was aces. Everybody was great at what they did. It really showed me the importance of a team. And I stayed at Willow till 2014. Mixed the Oprah Winfrey event in 2011, and there was a guy there from a local sound company, well, not a local sound company, a big sound company that I've done work for called SES. And he called me and said his favorite artist was looking for somebody and thought I'd be perfect. And so took the job mixing Joe Banamassa.
You're jumping ahead now. We haven't gotten there yet, Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Scott,
I didn't know how far I was supposed to go. So I can totally pause the story.
Yes,
you do
pause
get
right
the
there.
award for like the most succinct background. You know, it's really hard for people to be like, here's the 5 steps it took to where like I'm at where I'm at. 7,200 square feet to build Willow.
7,200 seats.
7,200 seats. Yeah. I heard that when Noah heard about that, he felt, not so bad about the ark anymore because the Willow, building was so much more difficult. Speaking of Willow, though, you were really, when you were there, you were on like the cutting edge of the church production world. So tell us about some of the cool things that you were doing back then. Some of the, the cool stuff.
Willow?
At Willow, because some of the cool stuff you loved. Maybe if, some struggles, some wins.
Willow was where I got baptized into the digital console era.
Did they dip
literally
you into
had
like a sea of console pieces to be baptized into it?
In other words, digital did not exist in my world until I went to Willow. We literally they had just bought the PM1Ds. I mean, the serial numbers, if I remember right, were like 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12. I mean, it was like some of the very, very first pieces of the PM1D. And there was still a lot of software glitches, a lot of learnings. And it was where I had to totally rethink how I did my job, going from analog. And I was mixing on some beautiful analog consoles. I was on Midas mostly, XL200, XL4. And so, yeah, that was an incredible gift to have a place that was already on the cutting edge of my industry. Shure was right down the street. We continued to help develop Shure products because our room and our capacity and the talent that we had on our stage warranted, a lot of beta testing. We had Accent at our room before anybody else did. We had the KSM9, which is another funny story because we had a KSM9 on our stage. I was mixing Nicole Nordman, and it was at one of our arts conferences, and it was blank. There was nothing on it. And people were taking pictures of it and asking what it was. And, and we had signed all these NDAs, so we had to just play stupid.
What did you tell them it was? It's a secret,
He said, I'm in the mob and I have nothing to say.
That's right. Back to the mob.
Then the KSM9 came out. Willow was just so many learnings and really pressurized events that required, excellence. And again, just working with some incredible people. That was one of my favorite things. Everybody was so good at what they did. And we just locked arms at times to do these ridiculously huge events. I remember the first time I was mixing for 120,000 people outside the room. We didn't have a broadcast mix. And down below me was this amazing guy named Chris Gilley, who was doing all this multi-band compression and putting in audience mics and kind of submixing what I was doing, what was going to the satellite. And just, again, here's a church doing this amazing high-tech events. And, I was in the middle of it, again, with a great team. And it was invaluable. And just, it was allowed me to develop skill sets. And I just want to say right now, I tell most of the young people coming up that are looking to do what I do, go to the local church and get involved in the youth group because they have the gear. I mean, the clubs don't exist anymore. And if you want real world experience, start there. It's where you can make mistakes and not get crucified for it. You're going to be able to, have time with virtual sound check to develop your skills and just keep showing up. The deal in this gig is to keep showing up. That's how you get the gig and the next gig and the next gig is just be tenacious.
I love because people can look at you and think like, oh, it was easy for Scott. Like he was at Willow Creek for 14 years. So he got all the opportunities that I would never have. But what you're saying and in your story is like, I didn't start at Willow Creek. I started in the local church. I worked my way up. I started in the youth group and the pastor was impressed with my work ethic and my mix in the youth group. That's how I got the next level and then the next level. And
Yeah, I mean, what people don't realize, I mean, I literally came from a 1,500 population farming community.
And
At one
100 of
point-
those 1,500 were in his gymnastics class. So
That's right.
Come on, it's true. And what I was doing then, when I was kind of getting out of the club scene in my cover band, I was working with Ron, and we were driving a truck around hauling homemade speaker boxes and par cans to like Ohio State fairs and things like that. I was making $50 a day eating funnel cakes and hot dogs. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was taking showers in horse barns. I didn't have a hotel room. I mean, I just kept wanting to be a part of whatever this industry threw at me. And I loved every minute of it. And
it was throwing hot dogs and hot cakes.
But I had
Funnel
two praying
cakes.
grandmothers. See, the whole key to this whole thing is two praying grandmothers. That is exactly what changed my trajectory, because I was going head first into rock and roll.
That's totally unfair, because most of us just have one praying grandmother and then a crazy one.
Yeah. Well, I lucked out, and I truly believe it was their prayers basically that realigned my trajectory, because I was full speed ahead. And there's some cool moments in my career that I knew that I was to go work in the church, and it absolutely has paid off.
Okay, so if we
than one.
fast forward to the next step, and of course we have to, check in with Blake. Blake, do you know who Joe Banamassa is?
He is a legendary guitar player.
And did you Google this information?
I pay attention when we have our pre-podcast prep meetings.
Well, good for you. I was actually at a sound check a couple years ago in Nashville, and 2 or 3 Joe Banamassa semis were loading up all their stuff to head out. He is one of the most prolific blues guitar players on the planet. He can play a guitar like very few people on the planet.
He must be able to have multiple semis.
Oh, yeah.
Gracious.
So, Scott, it sounds like the 2011 United Center opportunity kind of was a, key change in your life trajectory. Did that lead to the Joe Banamassa opportunity?
It absolutely did. I look at success, the definition is where preparation meets opportunity. And I love that definition of success. But I also know that everybody gets an opportunity. Are you prepared? And so when I did Oprah, I had prepared for a long time. And when my mix was shown to a whole new group of people and professionals, they took notes. And one guy remembered my name quite readily. He actually met me the next day. We were leaving the hotel, and he stopped me. He said, I just want to tell you, your mix was the best mix of the day. It was so good. And I thanked him and didn't think anything else of it. And 4 years later, he calls me to mix Joe. And, you just can't not count. I just tell people, whatever job you're doing, if you're mixing for the Boy Scouts to a rock show, give it your all. Make it the best mix it can be, because you never know who's in the crowd listening. And that's how these things, your career gets perpetuated forward. It's not you having a great social media page and look at me, look at me, look at me. It's when you step up behind, in my case, step up behind the console, mix it great every single time.
So how long were you out with Joe?
5 years. It was a gift. It was an absolute gift to me. I mixed in 28 countries. I've got my name in 5 live DVDs from Red Rocks, Carnegie Hall, Radio City Music Hall, Greek Theater, the Royal Albert Hall in London, the Sydney Opera House. And
even I recognize those names, Toby. Like, those are big venues.
I'm so proud of you,
It's
Blake.
amazing.
Yeah. And and again, I just thank God. It's like the band that I got to mix, and I'm still good friends with most of them, were just these players that Joe could attract, because Joe is he is truly one of the best guitar players. And he is one of those guys, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. I saw a guitar in that man's hand, I would say, every time I ran into him. He was either practicing, running scales, doing something. And as he's talking to you, he's always playing. He was just always perfecting his craft, never settling, never thinking I've arrived. And that attracted, like, Anton Fig was his drummer who played on the David Letterman show for 29 years. Reese Winan was his keyboard player, and he was Stevie Ray Vaughan Double Trouble. He was Double Trouble, that keyboard player.
Wow.
All that Hammond stuff.
Yeah.
His horn players came from Tower of Power. One of his keyboard players came from Dream Theater, Derek Sherinian.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, and his musicians changed, so I got to mix guys that had played with everybody. And I'm a musician, so I love hanging around creative musicians and just talking music. I'm not so much a gear person. I'm way more creative. Like, if we started walking down this road, that's why I've never done a Waves plugin. I don't care.
You've been called out, Waves.
We need tools and we need gear. But I really start tuning out fast when, we start putting our careers or our mixes on what plugin we're using or what mic we're using. It's all about the talent. It's all about the other side of the mic. It's you got to fix it at the source.
And since you don't like talking about gear, tell us about the gear that you're using on Joe's tour.
Was it the PM1D?
No. Come on, that was sacrificed long ago. No, it was a Digico. It was a Digico ST10 with an L Acoustics PA, K2 being the big box I was using.
I bet that sounded all right.
It was quite adequate. Yeah.
Man.
It absolutely got the job done.
It's funny you say the PM1D was sacrificed long ago, because didn't we just get and sell one of those in like 2 seconds, Toby?
No, we have 3 of them in the warehouse now, and we've actually committed to buying a couple more. But we do have churches like Fellowship Church and Grapevine is still using that at their monitors.
What was that? Okay, well, I must be mixing that up with
You're
another.
talking about the QL1, like the latest generation of Yamaha stuff. That stuff, if it gets in, is like pure gold. It's gone the next second.
Yeah.
So we were going to ask you what your favorite, board was of all time, and your favorite artist to mix for of all time. I'm wondering if we might have already gotten the answer to that.
Well, is Joe your favorite that you've mixed for of all time, or was it maybe somebody at the United Center that
is
you
it
just did
awkward
one
to
song
ask
for?
that? He's going to say Oprah was his favorite to mix of all time.
I saw that question was coming, and I've got a myriad of answers. It's almost like asking somebody, what's your favorite movie? I have had the privilege, of mixing Take 6, which was unbelievable, to mixing Joe Banamassa and his band of merry men. That was amazing. I've mixed Jason Bonham, who's John Bonham's son, on drums in a Joe Banamassa band called Black Country Communion, which absolutely blew my mind because he sounds so much like his dad. We'd had guitar players showing up when we were on the road with Joe, like Neil Schoen showed up, Eric Johnson showed up. I've got, again, I approach every mix the same, every artist the same. You're going to get the same intensity. And at the end of the day, I really can't say which one was my favorite because, I've got to mix a lot of good people. I will say one of my favorite vocal mixes of all time that blew my mind was CeCe Winans. I totally understood why she was a Grammy Award winner once she started singing. Her vocal technique and just the way her voice sound was just heaven to me.
So it sounds like you are back off the road, and are you the audio director at the Crossing at Chesterfield?
Yeah. That's also a gift. I mean, this little thing happened called COVID, and it kind of shut down the live events industry for almost 2 years. And man, I don't even want to mentally go back through that. So unbeknownst to me, my name, even to my now boss, Aaron Latina, who's a gem of a human being. And he asked me to go to coffee with him, and went to coffee with him. And our coffee meeting that was supposed to be 30 minutes went 3 hours. And it just was this, like, let's work together. Let's do this. Let's do something here. And
so did COVID force your hand to get off the road? Were you looking to get off the road, or was it just sort of God's timing?
No, it wasn't. I got off the tour bus in 2019. It was just time. It was time. I I had gotten pretty sick on the road. It is, man, Joe's touring schedule is so intense compared to like a Nashville touring schedule where like Nashville, you're home usually Monday through Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, and you do a couple shows and come back home. Joe, you're out for 6 weeks at a time, and it's 3 shows, 1 off, two shows, 1 off, 3 shows. And it was intense. And it was just time for me to get off the road. And I was feeling it. And what's amazing, I mean, to wrap it into the COVID coming, when I got off the bus, I felt like, man, I need to just sell my house in Chicago and get back home. My sister had kids. I'd been in Chicago for almost 20 years. I didn't know my nieces. I've been away from my family. I was ready for a change. I didn't need to live in Chicago anymore. So I sold my home. Really felt like it was a God thing to sell my home. Good friends from Willow Creek. Todd Elliott drove the truck. Love Todd.
Todd drove the truck for you?
Yeah.
What a guy.
Todd literally drove the truck all the way to my hometown in Southern Illinois, where I'm currently at. And a couple months later, COVID. But guess what? I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a job, but I don't have a mortgage. So there was some divine things in there about my decisions in life and how things played out. And I am back in mixing in a church. I'm mixing most of their broadcast mix. But even more than that, I'm developing this team. And I'm meeting incredible audio engineers, younger guys that are hungry, and we are having a blast. And I just got permission to redo consoles and PA. And so it's all coming. We are about to do an incredible update to Chesterfield, to the crossing in Chesterfield, and then to the other campuses. And
can you give us any sneak peek into the manufacturers that you're, replacing your stuff with?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We're going with L Acoustics. I fell in love with L Acoustics on the road with Joe, and I just know what that box is going to do. And because we're a Yamaha ecosystem, we're going to go Ravage.
Can you get Ravage?
And well, right now you can't. So I say that.
He's the Godfather, Toby. He's going to make them an offer they can't refuse.
I say that we had already planned on doing the PA first and console second. So that's what we're doing. And, if Yamaha for some reason still can't get chips and can't make consoles, we'll move to whatever the next one is.
The PM1D. We got 3 of them. Come on, Scott. You know it.
Oh my goodness.
We'll put new guts in it for you, just like you asked for.
Hey, I love the PM1D. I do not have a problem with that console whatsoever.
What has it been like being back at the church the past couple of years? Because I mean, you went from, Joe was no Joe Schmo. I mean, he was Joe go, go, go. I mean, he was always touring.
Wow.
And you're going so fast. I'm not going to lie. I was sitting on that joke for like 2 minutes, like dying to say it. And then now you're, back at the church for a couple of years now. Like that's got to be a wild transition.
Again, seasons of life, you got to pay attention to these things. The road, Joe checked all the boxes. I mean, good night. I got to see the world. And I'm in a situation right now. I've got 2 parents. They're 81 years old. There's health issues there. COVID happens. They need somebody to go to their grocery store so they're not exposed. Doctor Zoom calls. I'm absolutely in this season of life where I need to be to help my family. At the same time, I'm got a job with an incredible church that is just filled with incredible people. I mean, the leadership there has been some of the best I've ever experienced. And I feel that this season of life is perfect. I'm able to take care of mom and dad and the family, and I'm able to work at this incredible church. And I'm getting ready to spend a lot of money. I mean, why even joke about that? Our tools are expensive, and they believe in the vision, and we're going to put in an L Acoustics PA. And, Seth Jackson's there, Nathan Alves' business partner. And Seth came on staff about 6 months ago now. And so we are just completely redoing staging, lighting, video, sound, for
And
me,
we got to mention Chenoweth too.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Steve Chenoweth. He's like been at that place for, I want to say 17 years.
Yeah.
He's a key to this whole thing because, you got to have a guy that grew up in the culture and knows where the gaff tape's stored. I mean,
where the bodies are buried.
Yeah. Like a lot of places, the Great Resignation. I mean, through COVID, a lot of people left their jobs, and the Crossing was no different. A lot of people left the production team, and so we're rebuilding. I was one of the first hires, and so a guy like Steve has been completely invaluable to just navigating and understanding the things I just said, the culture and where are things like being, my resume looks really good, but if I don't know where batteries are kept, we have a problem. And so, yeah, love Steve.
Okay, speaking of problems, one of our favorite little segments we like to do is a disaster story. And so we're hoping with your resume that you just alluded to that you've got, a handful of really fun disaster stories, but is one of them sticking out in your mind where just everything went wrong?
There is one. Let's go back to Oprah.
Oh, yes.
So,
also, did you get a car from Oprah? You get a car, you got a car, right?
No, but it was the biggest paycheck I ever got. I took a picture of that check.
There you go.
We'll put it in the show notes
with your account number and everything.
Yeah, this involves Beyonce. Another amazing sound engineer, Chris Raybould.
Ooh, we know that name.
Yes.
There were two artists I did not mix. They're out of the 14. Rascal Flatts was one, and the other one was Beyonce. And Chris Raybould, it was the first time I met Chris. Beyonce consisted of 6 Pro Tools tracks and a live vocal. There was no band. This was a television event. There were 60 dancers. Again, you can pull this all up on YouTube. It's a very impressive event. I think the budget for production was $10 million, and they went over that budget.
Ooh, that was your check, right?
So, no. No.
10 million was the budget.
You're trying to trap me here, I see. So let's get into Beyonce's rehearsal. So again, I'm going to go back. The Bulls kept winning their basketball games.
Jerks.
And so we were not able to get into the United Center and prep for each element. And so, we had a live orchestra. We had a killer 7-piece band from LA. Greg Filliganes was the music director. If you don't know who he is, look him up because he's amazing. He's out with John Mayer right now. And we had to get this thing dialed. And Beyonce, each musical act had an hour. You have an hour. Well, with her 60 dancers and this LED interaction, and she was doing the new song, Who Runs the World Girls. And she goes over. And to say I was tired and pushed during this event is an understatement. I was in double overtime. We just had no time, so you just didn't sleep. We just had to keep working and keep working. So she spends 2 hours in the sound check. And I look at Chris, I said, are you good? Are we good? I'm going to save your scene here. I'm going to back you up. And he goes, yeah, I'm good. And I slide my finger up and I hit recall instead of save.
Oh, no.
Okay. My mind, I got tunnel vision. The blood in my head disappeared. I just realized I just got rid of all of that work. Okay. And I'm gripping the console because I'm starting to pass out from the anxiety and stress of what I just done. And I'm looking and I remember there's an undo button that I've never used before in that area of the console. And I slid the cursor over and hit undo and it all came back.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally got down on my hands and knees and just started breathing because I literally almost passed out because the pressure of this gig was that intense. And for me to accidentally wipe out this rehearsal that we just had with Beyonce it almost took me. And I saved it. Everything was good. And we moved on.
Did you change your shorts immediately after that?
I think, did you guys feel that story?
I
my
did.
gosh.
Jesus almost took you home that day, or well, Satan was trying to take you out, and then Jesus was like, no, not his time yet.
You can't
the thing of it is, Chris doesn't know this story till he listens to this. He has no idea that happened.
Well, now
I've never told him, because I literally physically, it's hard for me to revisit that moment.
Okay, so it's been said now, Raybold has to listen to our podcast. And Beyonce too. Let's just put it out there. Come on, B.
I was gonna say you almost deleted the Queen Bee. Oh my gosh, that is amazing, Scott. Thank you for being so vulnerable and giving me an anxiety attack myself when I'm marketing these things. I think what's a really cool moment to share from the pod. I'm sure that's about to turn into an Instagram reel later.
Along with that $10 million check.
Yeah. Now sometimes I might delete a reel on accident, but it's not gonna be a $10 million reel or Beyonce's work. Whew. Avoiding that would be nice. Having that undo button was great. Those little tricks. Speaking of tricks, what would be a tech takeaway that you would have for our church techs here that are like, man, this is the godfather of tech? I prepped for your episode, by the way. I'm wearing the cat father, mob shirt just to.
Yeah, I'm slightly having a hard problem with that title, but it's okay. We'll let you have fun with your cat shirt too.
If you get a cease and desist letter from the mob on calling yourself that, let us know.
I don't think you'd get a letter.
Yeah, this is why I like to do the podcast, because I love teaching. I love giving back. I mean, that was another part of my reason I went back into the church. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and this really brilliant man said something like, you can get good at something in life, really good at something in life, but if you never turn around and give back, there's no legacy. And I'm 57. I'm not a young pup anymore. And I just love talking to young engineers, and mostly about the art of mixing. Like, everything that's happening's got to come through you. And I recently learned something. We were at Riverport here in St. Louis, and I was with Ron Krause, and we got to go to several different concerts, from Alanis Morissette to Travis, what's his name? Thomas Rhett. And the mixes all had a different kind of vibe and a different flair, and they matched the personality of the guy that was mixing. And there was like this epiphany about, that, like, the mix is kind of connected to the dude or dudette, like how their personality is, or how they, attack life, or they go through life, is kind of reflected in their art and the way they listen, they move the faders, they adjust things. And I love talking to young engineers about that part of the deal. I mean, we've moved so far into like technology, it seems like to me, that we're forgetting about the musician, and we're forgetting about, listening, the art of listening, and the art of painting the picture of music, and using any tool that you've got. I didn't have the pleasure of having, virtual soundcheck and a Mac computer and Logic and GarageBand that comes with it. I mean, I had none of that. I had, a Tapco, a Rapco, a Soundcraft, a Mackie, a Yamaha analog desk. I could go on. And I never made an excuse of the tool. I just knew that I could get you there, because I would not stop twisting knobs until it felt right. And that's what a mix is. It's all about emotion. It's all about feeling. Nobody cares at the end of the day in the crowd what mic you used. Did you get them off? Did you make them feel good? Did they feel that artist? Our job is to translate what the band is doing on the stage through the speakers emotionally. It's supposed to have impact. And so that's what I love to tell young engineers. Don't get caught up in the gear game, or have it, or the lack of. And I heard this amazing quote one time, that creativity thrives in the presence of lack. When you've got to do something and you don't have the tool, a lot of times the way you figure out how to do that thing turns out a different, result that sometimes is better or more unique. So Yeah, that's what I would say right there.
Love that, man. Yeah, creativity. It's the opportunity to do something you thought you couldn't do with things that you never would have considered. And it's funny how the limitation, putting yourself back in the box can really be the thing to learn something new on. Man, just thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. I'm in awe of all the names we've heard today, Toby.
I'm honored, man. I thank you guys for calling, to ask me to do this. I've got the gift of gab from my dad. I can talk. He was a teacher for 37 years. He taught shop class, small engines, welding, woodworking. I got none of that, by the way. But both my grandfathers were guitar players. So yeah, I love doing these things and talking with great guys like you that are just trying to make a difference. And even though you won't take a VCR, that came from my generation.
Oh, hey, if someone was
I won't hold that against you.
If someone was going to find you to get that VCR, where would they find you at?
Yeah, I'm in Chesterfield, Missouri at the Crossing. It's a great church. It's literally at the end of the Spirit of St. Louis Airport. It's a very cool location, a great group of people, incredible leadership, wonderful pastor. Or look me up on Facebook. That's kind of my go-to. I have a slight presence on Twitter and Instagram, but literally I use those to stalk my friends. I pretty much just stay on Facebook. It's just easy. I'm the old guy and I don't have to pay attention to the social media that much then and keep up with things. So, and I love to talk to anybody that wants to talk about, mixing and what we do. And it's a pure joy to do that. So get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, good conversations coming to Scott's inbox soon. Thanks for being on the podcast, man.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
Blake, we didn't admit this on the show, but essentially, it's you and I sat down and had a meeting and talk amongst ourselves like, how can we get Beyonce to listen to the show?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's my number one goal. I've got it written in, ink on the wall.
Because, I will repost her all the time, hoping that she will notice me.
Yeah, if you liked it and you should have put your name on it. I keep putting my name next to Beyonce's and she doesn't listen to the show. So how do we get that to happen?
Speaking of retagging and posting.
Oh, I see where you were leading me there. Yes.
I totally teed you up.
We're never going to reach Beyonce unless everyone shares this episode, tags her. says,
well, please tag Chris Raybould. For real.
Or Chris Rabel. But on a serious note, if you could share the pod and tag us, do something funny, we'll repost it. It'll be great. So Beyonce's the queen. Maybe you could be the king here, or the second queen.